From Rixie, this is Frameform. Hello, Frameform listeners. We have something different for you today. In this week's episode, Jen, Claire, and myself took the time to talk to some people outside the dance film community. Yes, I'm talking about people who are not dance filmmakers, but they know dance film in some kind of way. So today's episode will conclude 3 separate conversations, talking with our friends, and their outside perspective and foreign relationship with dance film. This was a fun episode to do, and we hope to do something like this again. Enjoy the show.
My first question is, can you share a bit about who you are, what you do, kind of your unique, awesome position in this whole film and film festival world?
Sure. My name is Jon Gann, and I am a film producer. Previously, I was the director of a few film festivals, and I have been consulting for the past 10 years with film festivals around the country. I've curated dozens of programs for dozens of events, and through those years, I have seen my fair share of films of every kind of quality and plenty of dance films.
So I remember, Jon, when we first met a few years ago when I moved to DC, first of all, I have to thank you for showing me Airtable, because it is basically a running joke on the program that Airtable is the solution for all life's problems.
Airtable is the solution for every problem. I have been a devotee since the beginning. It is the most incredible thing. I organize my entire life and all of the projects I do on Airtable.
I just need an Airtable to help me manage all my Airtables. If I could get that together, then I think I'd have it all.
So first of all, I had to mention that, so thank you. Next, I have to say something that stuck with me from our conversation. And I was this new person coming from another country, another coast, and saying, I love dance film and I want to start a festival here. And I could kind of see the life drain from your eyes. And I love that you are not just like, oh yeah, that's cool. You were honest and you said, yeah, I'm not a big fan. And that really stuck with me. And I wasn't like personally offended. I just really liked that you were honest to my face about it and wasn't like, oh yeah, that's really interesting that you like that. And as someone that has programmed so many festivals, that's seen so many different kinds of films, I knew you were the person I wanted to interview for this episode. Can you share what your impression is about dance films? What kind of dance films have you seen? What does or doesn't work?
Okay, so I'm going to make a distinction between what I call dance films, dance on film, and films on dance.
Love it.
Okay, they're all very different. Like, okay, so dance on film is, segments in a musical, or I love that. I can't get enough of it. But then again, I'm a musical theater nerd. So to me, that is like the ultimate expression. And I can watch Gene Kelly, dance in Paris all day long. I think it's great. Every time Seven Brides and Seven Brothers is on, I cannot wait for that scene when they're dancing and building the barn. I think it's the greatest because it's a great storytelling device. And I don't have a problem necessarily with what I would call formal dance on film. Like during this lockdown, I have been loving the Matthew Bourne ballets that have been released through the National Theatre in London. I mean, I've always loved his work. I think it's creative, and every time it's in town, I go to see it. But as a recorded, I guess, performance, I don't mind that because it's a performance that's being recorded. It's a different type of thing. My contention is I'm not big on people who are trying to use dance as the sole storytelling device for a film. I just find that while there are some that are very successful, the majority of them are not, because they're either choreographed by someone who's so into dance that they're not thinking about film as a medium, as a storytelling medium, which is very different than an in-person experience, which is what most choreographers are thinking about when they're thinking about dance. Or it's so experimental that as a programmer, I find it difficult to program for a general audience because I'm like, well, I can see 6% of my audience loving this, but I can see the other 94% of the audience groaning for 15 minutes. And, my job as a programmer is to entertain them, right? Obviously, I want to challenge them, but you have to pick and choose the battles of how you want to challenge people, right?
Totally.
So, right.
How challenging are we going to be today?
Right. I mean, do I want to challenge them with a documentary about racial injustice, or do I want to challenge them with a dance film? And so these are the things that I have to think about as I'm putting these together. Again, as I said, there's plenty of dance films in which dance is the main storytelling device that I do enjoy. I just find that the majority of them that I watch just don't capture my attention. And sometimes I think that they go on too long or in experimental ways that just don't. They just don't grab an audience and grab me.
I think the same points of friction you're having are really resonate with what those of us that are quote unquote in the community or like us dance film nerds. We totally agree. A lot of these films are longer than they need to be. It is hard to program an experimental film. It is difficult when dance is like the main narrative device. And then you do have people that are crossing over either from film into dance or dance into film. And I do love how you separated those three separate categories because it's true. Like there's so many different ways that we can see dance in this way. And that's a big mission with the podcast is like showing a range and also helping people understand that it's not just point and shoot, right? The camera is a dancer, editing as a form of choreography, and really trying to elevate the form because I understand it's so hard to just put a random dance film in with other short films. And I think that's probably contributed to the boom in dance film festivals because we are a niche and we understand we're like the weird kid on the side that maybe just needs to find the other weird kids and celebrate our weird stuff. I love that you mentioned Gene Kelly. I'm also a huge fan, not just because of his performance and his ability, but also his mind, his talent, his fight for more equality and like promoting more actors and actresses of color and performers and really trying to like change the way that things were going at the time using his fame for good. Have there been any musicals in particular that really stick with you that you're like, that is the pinnacle? Like you mentioned Matthew Bourne, so I'd imagine you might be a Red Shoes fan. You mentioned American in Paris.
Yeah, yes, I love American in Paris, and Red Shoes. I actually like the ballet much more than I like the movie. I'll be quite honest. Matthew Bourne's Edward Scissorhands,
yes,
to me was a life-changing theatrical moment for me. I don't think I have ever cried that hard in a theater. Like I was almost embarrassed for myself at the end about how hard I was crying, and it was weird. And I actually went back to see it a second time to see what that was. I mean, I've always liked that movie. It's nice, it's campy, it's fun. The Elfman music is amazing, but the way he had transformed that into this live experience, which is beautiful storytelling. By the time he gets to the ice carving, I was a mess. I was just a mess. It was so romantic and so beautifully done. And I think the reason I like Bourne's choreography in general is I think he thinks in a cinematic way. All of his shows are like watching a film unfold. It's not just dancing after dancing after dancing. It is so highly integrated. And, every production just is so slightly unique. I think the one we watched this spring was Romeo and Juliet, which, was in a mental institution. I mean, the whole premise was so bizarre, but it worked so beautifully. And it was so much heavier hitting than probably the last few dozen Romeo and Juliet on stages I've seen.
I think he's totally the master of remixing things and consciously taking like, what are the core themes I want to pull out of this, but how do I plop it down in a separate setting? It just adds these layers to it. Or like how the Nutcracker, all the children are so creepy and like the whole party scene that's like this epitome of like ballet gaiety and like the adults are at the party, like completely takes this, flips it upside down, shakes out the box, and it's like, here you go. Here's something like way better.
Right.
Yeah, I love what he does. I agree what you said about the cinematic approach to his performance too. I think that the elevated performance quality of like the acting in his company members makes a huge difference. And just like the comedy, and I think it really feels like very timeless, but very classic in that way, where you're seeing those elements of performance that you sometimes miss when people are looking so far into the future and trying to be deadpan or focus on like the form itself. You lose a lot of people that way. So sometimes just those traditional elements of visual art and strong storytelling and making people laugh, making them cry, that's what keeps audiences invested.
I would agree 100%.
So I think that a cool thing about this conversation is that you don't outright dislike dance. You see dance live, you appreciate it. It's just how it's done with film sometimes doesn't land. Can you think of anything specific that is not work? Like you mentioned, like if the narrative is too abstract, how do you make something compelling, especially for an audience that maybe isn't inclined to watch dance as much?
Well, I think dance films are the type of films that are made by people who are very passionate about their dance. But they're not thinking about who's going to receive this film, right? And it was funny. I was just on another podcast this morning. I was talking to someone, and I said, my advice to all filmmakers is that before you even put pen to paper to start writing out your script, the first thing you have to figure out is who are you writing to? Who do you think are going to be the eyeballs on the screen watching your film? If you can identify who that is, then you can make a really successful film, because every decision you make from that point on is reflected in those eyes, right? And so I think that because so many of those short dance films, they're very passionate about that. This is what they want to do, and they think it's an artistic expression of themselves, and it is, and that's great. But they're not thinking about who wants to watch it, right? So they throw it together. They go in the park and they dance and they swing it all together, hopefully with some good music. Sometimes the music is really the bigger problem than anything else. And then, or there is no music, which is really a problem. and then they submit it, but not thinking that, wow, here's a group that is not interested in seeing this type of film because they've never programmed this type of film. So why would all of a sudden a festival decide, we've never programmed white women dancing in the woods? Why all of a sudden do you think we're going to take yours? Like, what about yours is so special that this festival is going to consider it? And I think that that's one of the things a lot of filmmakers don't think about when they're conceptualizing their idea. And even after they finish, when they're going to submit it to a festival or send it out in the world, thinking about who's going to receive it.
So would you recommend, if a dance film is trying to reach an audience that is more of a general festival circuit audience and not the specific dance film, festival, would you advise that they maybe try and mix in some narrative or some dialogue or some more like traditional film elements? There is this film, Jan Valu, I programmed a few years ago, that had dance scenes in it to the point where the characters were learning how to dance, and it was kind of a section of the film and served a purpose in the story. But there was, actually, I don't even think there was talking, which was great. It was silent, but there was a lot of like acting and just story time outside of a performing space. Do you think that would help films get into like more of a general festival?
I perhaps. I think that most general audiences that are going to a festival are looking for great storytelling. I mean, the truth is, that's what we're really looking for as programmers and as audience members. We're looking for great storytelling. And if your dance film is telling a story in a relatively normative narrative structure, right? There's a rising action with conflict, and there's some sort of climax, and there's a denouement. I mean, that's the story structure that most people are expecting when they see a film, whether it is a 4-minute short film or a 4-hour feature, right? We're still expecting that same type of structure. If you're kind of doing that with dance, it should work. The problem is so many of these dance films are sort of just one note, right? It's me getting out in the world and I'm getting frantic, and then I'm going to calm down, and maybe I got frantic again, and then it would be over.
And the whole film's about the self versus society.
Right. Just really heady, big, 35,000 foot topics that resonate again with the creator who's so invested and so into it that they can't see outside of it to go, wow, that's a really big concept you're trying to tackle here in 7 minutes worth of motion. do you think that's how other people are perceiving it? And I think that's the big question to ask yourself as a filmmaker. How are other people perceiving that 7 minutes? I might think it's the greatest thing since sliced bread, since I made it. And I think that, obviously my dance is, people should understand it because I'm a great dancer. But it's not like that. Dance is very interpretive. And, a movement of the hand might mean something to the dancer and the choreographer, may mean something completely different to the audience member who's not getting the subtleties that are behind it because they're not understanding that language or that interpretation of the language of dance.
Totally. And I think that is the toughest part, is how do you have something with enough depth and layers that the insiders and the person making it understands significance, but how do you make it clear enough and accessible enough for an audience to actually receive that message? Because at the end of the day, if they have to read the film's bio or description to get it, then you're not really sharing it with the actual medium that you're creating. And you've written a paragraph. You're a writer.
And I would agree with you. And I find that to be a problem with a lot of films. I used to joke that filmmakers should never write the descriptions of their films because inevitably a filmmaker say, well, my film is about A, B, and C. And then I watch it and I'm like, your film is about X, Y, and Z. It's about something completely different. While you think this is a funny crime comedy, right? I see this as a serious, look into corruption and blah, blah. I mean, I see something just completely different. And I think that this is a big problem in general with independent film, especially from younger and emerging filmmakers who are so trying to find their voice that they're not thinking again about that audience and who's going to receive it and how do I use my voice to communicate to them. And I think that's the big issue. And again, I think that unfortunately that applies more to dance film than others. And I think that's partially the medium. And I think that's partially the fact that most general audiences don't understand, like they're not sure what they're supposed to be looking for.
Totally. And I love that you said all that. I think that this episode will probably, I'm saying this really early, but I think this is probably going to be one of my favorite episodes of the season just because we are getting that outside eye and perspective. And the reality is the majority of the world, the majority of people that are in the creative arts are not all dance insiders, and even less of them are dance film insiders. So if we do want to actually see this art form, this hybrid language take off and be seen by more people, we do need to consider what those outside eyes are seeing. Thank you so much for coming on the podcast today. Thank you for all the work you do in the film industry, helping people at all stages of their career and their festivals. And I hope that maybe I'll persuade you to come see some dance films at Eaton Workshop this October. And I'll show you some stellar examples that I think could reach a general audience.
That I will take you up on that, and I will see you in October, definitely.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Jon.
Thank you.
Hello. Can you please introduce yourself and what you do for a living?
Well, I was very clear in my pre-interview request. No geolocation, anything like that. I'll tell you that I work in HR. My name's Jack. That's all I want people to know about me.
Okay.
No, I'm just kidding. I'm your brother. Thanks for having me on, Claire.
Fantastic. Thank you so much for joining us on the show today, or I guess joining me on the show today, rather. But anyways, as you know, and as you've probably known for a long time, I've been involved in dance film for quite a while. And the idea today is that we're asking people who are not involved in dance film about dance film.
Or presumably who know anything about it, right?
Presumably.
Okay, good. All right, good. I just want to be starting from a good place here. I don't want to oversell it.
Okay.
Yeah.
Got it. But first of all, before I ask about dance film, like, what's your experience and background in dance?
I can't say that I have a huge background in dance. I have danced from time to time. I've been in very informal dance competitions. And I guess I would say it takes a more modern approach, but that is probably the most generous interpretation that you could come up with for the way that I move my body.
Well, I mean,
literally anything can be dance.
Then I'm definitely dancing.
Awesome. Awesome. And what's your experience seeing dance film or dance on film in any capacity?
I would say much more than most of the people that I know, but far less than you.
So, like, have you seen like dance film screenings or seen dance film online?
Yeah, both of those. I've been to dance film festival. I've seen kind of assorted dance films before I came on today. I watched a couple dance films, and I mean, it's to me, it's interesting because it's as a total layman here, it does really straddle the border, almost really between like it's a dance film. It emphasizes dance, but it's in many cases the format of like a music video. And to me, that's where you get that kind of crossover effect. But obviously, you know, you're emphasizing a part of these that you wouldn't otherwise in you know, kind of more traditional or more mainstream videos.
Right, right. Can you elaborate on that music video idea? Like, would you consider, and full disclosure, I did send a few samples before our interview today, but would you consider all of what you saw like music video type films?
I mean, no. I only like I said, this is coming from a, you know, the point of zero. I think that the style at which these are shot is very similar, and I think that you know, obviously there's more emphasis on the people in the video than the music itself. But at the same time, in the same way that music videos, they present themselves as movement to music, it really does show itself similarly.
Right on, right on. Also, that's something I've noticed as a habit of mine, is I always say right on after someone answers the question. I'm trying to steer away from that.
Oh, okay.
So.
All right. What do you say when I give you the correct answer?
Well, I mean,
all right, good. Let's just say I nailed that one.
You nailed it, Jack. You're rocking it so far here.
Okay, great.
Yeah. So there's now, based on what you've seen about dance film, and you've already mentioned the music video descriptor as a term, but like what characteristics of the films, I mean, compared to other either short films or either feature-length work that you see, would you say are unique to dance film?
I suppose unique to dance film. Well, first off, like I do think that these tend to trend bizarre, which is, I mean, it's great to be honest, but tend to trend bizarre where and in a way that like a lot of other short films or anything, it's like those when you see something that's jarring or strange in a short film or something that's like, I don't know, more widely distributed, it seems to be almost intentional, and that's an area where I personally like. When I watch a dance film, I come out of it thinking like, what did I just see? Like, you know, and I think that that's kind of the intent, right? Because it's, I mean, a lot of it is interpretive. It's you know, the content is obviously created to send a message, but that message is coming through in a way that it's not hitting you in the face. It's not explicit. It's like you have to make your own judgment. So I think a lot of it is interpretive, and that, I don't know, that to me that's kind of the defining characteristic, aside from the truly strange thing going on in a lot of these videos.
Right. Can you actually is there a particular moment that stands out as being strange or bizarre to you?
I'd rather not talk about it. It's too much.
too much trauma associated with it. Dance film tends to have like a very, sometimes almost frustratingly expansive definition, and that it almost, I mean, sometimes to the point that it encompasses literally any film that has any type of movement in it. But would you...
So it's film. is what we're talking about here. Okay,
yes,
good.
all film is
All right,
dance film.
Fair enough. Now I know.
Even that Derek Jarman Blue movie, which is just like an hour and a half of blue.
My favorite dance film is Casablanca.
All right. And so would you necessarily say that if you were to categorize dance film, would you necessarily like give it a genre term, or like would you say it's like a mode or like a method of filmmaking? Or
I guess and one thing to disclose is I have a low IQ. So like when you say mode, what do you mean?
like the way that you approach creating something, or the way that you approach the way that you approach the process.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, your first question was whether it was a genre, and I suppose that's where I would go with. Though now that you've said that dance film is this expansive definition, I'm not really sure anymore. But I mean, there's clearly it's clearly a level of intent when creating these, and I mean, there's a level of intent when you create any sort of film or movie or anything, but this is very clear and targeted, and also in my opinion exceptionally personal to the people who are creating these things.
Understandably, your involvement with dance film is kind of I guess tangential, because people who are related to you are very involved in it.
Yes.
Is this something that you would seek out on your own to see?
Okay, full disclosure, I don't really seek out anything to see. I'm usually the last person to know about stuff, and when I then find out about it, I kind of actively seek to not see it. No, I mean it's very interesting, and I think that and you can kind of hammer me for this one, but sort of the short attention span that I and kind of others in the world have. I mean, if you can hit me with a 4 or 5 minute dance video, like some of the samples that I saw, like it really can capture you. I do start to wander when I have to follow an interpretive story that gets to, even the 15 to 20 minute range. So I do think I think it's fascinating. I think it's incredibly well done, and showcases like real talent and vision. But you might be talking to the wrong person when it comes to just seeking out content.
There are always these discussions on how to make dance film, I mean, not only accessible to a wider audience, but how to really capture the attention of people watching dance film. Based on what you've seen so far, what do you think dance film needs to do that? Like, what, either in its presentation or in its content, in the content itself?
Is that really the goal? Like, I mean, I think that what does it need to do to capture the attention of a wider audience is the thing that anything does to capture the goal of a wider audience, which is do things to appeal to more people. So it's like dumb down the brand, like make it violent or sexy or whatever it is, like draw eyes to it. But I mean, to me, it's an art form that I'm not sure, like, if it truly is art, the people that are going to watch it they're just going to watch it. And I'm not sure that it needs to draw this wide audience.
Based on what you've seen from dance film, is there anything lacking from the experience? Or is there anything that the film finishes and you're like, oh, I wish there was more this, or I wish like I didn't get this from it?
I mean, it's kind of hard to say. It's like you certainly get visual stimulation. I suppose there could be more auditory stimulation, but like I said, I don't think that's the point. I don't think the point of these things is to make it easier for me, the viewer, to digest. I think it's that this is someone's vision, that they're showcasing that in the way that they see fit, and then it's kind of up to me to interpret it the way that I would like to interpret it, or to try to interpret it in the way that the creator intended it.
Do you think having a dance background or familiarity with dance makes that easier, or do you think that's necessary to interpret these films, or to really take in these films?
I'm sure it helps. I mean, it's like the what do they call the conundrum when you know very little about something, and so you're the most opinionated on that. So like I think if I were to say that you don't need experience, that I would be coming pretty high up on that that ratio there. So I'm sure that it does help. For me personally, I mean, I think that a lot of these I am taking guesses to interpret what the meaning of these films are, and I think that's okay. So maybe it helps your enjoyment, and it certainly, I'm sure, helps your understanding to have a background in dance and in dance film. But I mean, I think that it can be it's definitely enjoyed by watched by people who don't have any knowledge of dance film or even dance.
So yeah, that's thank you again, Jack, for sitting down with me. I just have one question, which is hopefully a bit more of a fun question. If you could,
the rest of the questions were brutal.
Oh yeah. I'm sorry. I'm sorry. I made you suffer through them. But if you could actually make a dance film, or if you had like a blank check to commission a dance film, what would that film look like? What would it be?
Boy, you're talking to someone with like a dent in his brain where the like creativity was supposed to be. I think that I like your idea of commissioning a dance film. So I think what I would do is I would scrape all my money together, maybe find some producer in the dance world. Maybe you guys could tell me who one is.
Okay. Well, I mean,
there you go. All right.
I just raised my hand, viewers.
Yeah. So then I'd pick you, and then I would say, "Well, make my money back," and then that's how I would do it. I don't know. Yeah, I guess it's hard. It's hard for me to say, because I think that you would. I would anticipate that if I were to make a dance film, I would personally not be in it. And then I almost feel like, if I had any sort of vision for it, it's like, how could I possibly ask someone else to try to, show that vision through their movement? I'm sure that happens a lot, but from my personal perspective, it would be really difficult to do. Let's go with I would commission it, and then just like find the people who are the best, and then tell them to go ahead and give me a good return on my investment.
All right. And hopefully we get the rare dance film that actually, makes that return.
It's going to be a hit.
Oh, I can't wait.
I only hire the best.
Arthur, would you care to introduce yourself to the show?
Yeah. As you said, my name is Arthur. I'm a filmmaker here based in Utah, and I usually work in science fiction films, but for my day job, I work at the Genetic Science Learning Center making educational content for high school, middle school kids. And some of my favorite films, that's a hard question, but I gravitate towards all sorts of genres. I do like science fiction movies, monster movies, Godzilla, that kind of stuff.
Yeah, I'd say that's you in a nutshell. So, Arthur, I know you've never made a dance film ever. I know I think you've helped on a few, right?
I don't think I did.
Wow. And you have quite a few friends that make dance films.
Yeah, you and I met filming ballet.
Yes.
So certainly at some point, it feels like we should have filmed a dance film together or something like that. But no, I've never been on any sort of creative team to make a dance film. But yeah, I feel like there was this like trend at the University of Utah where we went that everyone was just making a ton of them. They were all over the place.
And somehow you did not get involved.
Yeah, I was just always sticking to my weird cerebral sci-fi things.
Well, with that said, like, what is your perception of dance film? What do you think about it? Does it scare you? Are you confused by it?
No, I'm not scared of it. It's just not in my wheelhouse at all. I like watching it, but I don't seek it out. So you ask here in the notes that you sent me, do I think of dance films as a genre or a mode? And I kind of struggle with that. Whenever you start talking about genres, I feel like the whole conversation falls apart because you start saying, well, like, is this a genre or is this other thing a genre? And maybe, yes, no. But I feel like if you just say, I'm making a dance film, you need to go into a little bit more detail than that, because generally people aren't going to know exactly what that means. Like if I say I'm making a musical, people can kind of put that together and they know what that means. I'm making a cop show, people know what that means. I'm making a workplace comedy. Those are all genres that I think kind of carry images and tropes, cliches that people are very familiar with. But when you just say I'm making a dance film, I don't know what that means. Is it like Step Up? Or is it like more like a music video, right? Because a lot of the dance films that you showed me, the screen dance you showed me back in college, those were like music videos. Some of them just straight up were music videos that included dancing. So that's what I think of when you say dance film. But I don't think a lot of people do. Like my parents wouldn't. They wouldn't know what that is.
Do you like dance film at all? Or screen dance? The ones that we would show you?
Yeah, for sure. But I'm also not the kind of person that really loves music videos. Like I said, I don't seek out dance films and I don't seek out music videos really either. It's just not something that I really love to occupy my time with. That makes it sound like I don't like them, but I do.
Have you seen a dance film since school? Or at least anything?
For sure I have. Probably because you might have sent me one or something. I feel like there was something on Netflix I watched just out of the blue. So I guess no. I guess the answer to that is really no.
I've definitely have had conversations with people who don't know much about screen dance or this kind of type of filmmaking in general.
Mm-hmm.
But it's really funny just listening to you because I've worked with you on projects and you were in a community of people that were also making the kind of work that I make.
Mm-hmm.
And I guess I just didn't know that
It's just
that
not
you
in my
were kind
wheelhouse
of
at all.
like, yeah, like you were really like, even though you were in the circle, but you were kind of just this like invisible like existence. It's very interesting.
So sorry, yeah, and I hope I'm not offending you either.
No.
That's just like, no, it's not my cup of tea, but totally respect it.
I mean, including you and maybe the others or most people out there, like,
Mm-hmm.
like how do you take just this kind of work in, like when you first see it, like what are your thoughts? Like what is it challenging? Do you think it's challenging for other people? I know earlier you were saying, is it a musical that you're working on or Step Up?
Mm-hmm. So you also have to remember too that I really like screenwriting and I love dialogue and back and forth and characters and conversations, stuff like that. So it's almost like I have to change up the gears in my head in order to process a dance film. You are watching something that is working on a more symbolic, imagery-based level. And maybe that's also why I don't really love music videos or I don't really connect to them all the time. So I don't think it's a challenge to watch a dance film or a screen dance short or anything like that. It's just, yeah, not what I love about movies. It's just changing things up a little bit. It's not that bad. Does that make sense?
Yeah. I mean, you don't love that random musical number that sometimes pop up in movies?
Oh, but I do actually. That reminds me of the film that we just watched, The Red Shoes, which is like a 2-hour film about ballet. And it's mostly about the drama backstage. But in the middle of it, there's this incredible dance sequence that is pretty fantastical and kind of sums up the themes of the entire film and what the characters are going through. And to me, that like 10-minute dance sequence was the best part of the film, and I really, really enjoyed that. So clearly there is a part of me that likes the imagery and the crazy symbolism that you can kind of just pack into a dance, and it easily expresses what the characters are going through in a way that's easy to digest almost. It works on a primal level when you watch it. I get that. I understand that.
It's the escapism in the moment. I mean, all movies, books, video games is a type of escapism, for ourselves, just being in these stories. And I think dance in that nature is kind of that extra step into the escapism where you're more just expressing just emotion and body physically. I mean, dance, you're using your brain with it, but you're not thinking about what the words are coming out. You're not thinking about what's next. You're just kind of living in that moment. And I think that's what happens in those musical or dance numbers. It's that extra step of losing yourself.
That's so interesting. I wouldn't have thought of it as escapism, but it is a great way to just turn off your brain almost. Like I said, just change out the gears. Well, that's what I love about some musicals is I know some people don't like musicals because characters start singing and that kind of breaks the illusion. Yeah, and they don't want to watch that. I like musicals. I like that when a character is feeling something so powerfully that they need to express it through song. Mm-hmm. And then when the song isn't enough to convey their feelings and what they're going through, then they start to dance and it becomes this total fantasy. You can't just express in dialogue. And I think general audiences do like musicals. I think maybe they used to more, and now people are a little bit cynical or sniffy towards them. You just don't see as many, I think, that really... No, I don't... Maybe that's not true, because what was that movie? The Greatest Showman just, made how much money? Just a couple years ago?
Yeah. I mean, I think
just
they're
incredible.
Coming in vogue again. I mean, Hamilton,
Hamilton, of course, yeah.
They've been coming back because of seeing, a newer way to deliver them in audiences. I remember in the early 2000s, there was quite a bit of musicals coming back into fashion.
Mm-hmm.
It's Chicago and Rent, and they're coming back.
I used to be sniffy towards them too. Having that much emotion on screen is a little bit scary for a teenager, I think. So when I was younger, I was like, no.
It's a lot to take in.
But yeah, once you're more comfortable with yourself, you're like, okay, I can have fun with this.
Now, Arthur, if you had to, you were given the opportunity, but the thing was you had to make a dance film. In your eyes, what would that be like? Coming from someone that doesn't normally seek it out, but does enjoy the occasional musical.
Mm-hmm. I wanted to answer that with something like, you don't know what you don't know. I just don't know where to even begin with that. But I think it offers the opportunity for some fun visuals that you might not just be able to do otherwise. I immediately want to do something. It sounds terrible. This is a terrible idea. Please don't. No one judge me or do this at all. But set it in space. I hate to go right to the most terrible sci-fi thing. Just set it in space. That sounds fun. But yeah, with the stars and everything, you could do some fun stuff with, I don't know, constellations dancing around. How do you do that? Someone get on that. No one do that. That sounds bad.
Have you seen any films that were taken underwater? People would be strapped to a building and doing dance stuff like that anti-gravity. I mean, you're talking about gravity of space, and there are films out there, dance films.
Yeah, see, that sounds... People have already done this. People have already moved past this. That was baby's first dance film. This is old. It's been done. You should send me some of those then. I would love to watch some of those.
I will send you those. Because, I mean, if you're talking about gravity, I mean, hey, you could put the dancers in a green screen painted pool, and then you can put them in space. You're a VFX artist sometimes.
Yeah, that's true. Sometimes. I just imagine their silhouettes like moving through the stars. Has that been done? That's probably been done.
I don't think it's been done. Maybe if it was like, I don't want to say poorly done, but you know what I'm talking about, the green screen.
What are you talking about? Green screens always look great.
So good.
I feel like I didn't answer any of your questions very well. So thank you for putting up with me in my ignorance towards this style of film that you just love. And I'm just like, yeah, I don't know anything about it.
But that's the whole beauty of looking at this from an outside perspective because, you know, it's kind of just in my way trying to figure out how to cross that line of getting the general public excited about seeing dance work, which would lead them to maybe go see a dance performance.
Right. See, I think people like music videos quite a bit because their favorite artist did them or they have a band that they really liked or something like this. But I don't know how you get the general public to really fall in love with someone like they fell in love with Elvis Presley or the Beatles and now today like Beyonce. Like, how do you get people to really, I can't name a dancer. How do you get someone to fall in love with a dancer and the general public to really follow that? Because I don't think you get masses of people really flocking to dance films unless you have that as a starting point.
Do you know any famous dancers at the top of your head? Wow.
No.
That's okay. There's not one dancer. Have you ever heard of Misty Copeland?
No.
Wow. Because that would be considered maybe the most famous, or like Julianne and Derek Huff, also big dancers.
Huh. Yeah, no, I've never heard those names. I also feel like I missed out on a ton of things. Like, I feel like I just don't know a lot. But I feel like we all just get sidetracked. We get pulled into our little niches, and then we become very familiar with everything going on in them.
Yeah, that's true.
And those little subcultures. But then there's other subcultures that we just totally miss out on. And yeah, dance films and music videos, that's just not something that I ever got pulled into.
The good thing is that we got people that strive in those subcultures and do the best that they can to get the other subcultures to just know that they exist. And that's what I'm doing here today.
Yeah, if you put dance in a film, though, like, I absolutely love it. Like I said, in that Red Shoes section, I just thought it was the best part of the film. But it was still kind of wrapped in the screenplay of a feature film. Dance can be like the height of visual expression in films like that.
I like that. Well, thank you, Arthur, for joining me in today's little episode. Just kind of talking about the outward perspective of dance film.
And I really appreciate you having me on. Thank you.
Where can people find you?
I think if you Google my name, I come up, Arthur Veenema. My friend Andrew Slaughter and I host a film history podcast, A Century in Cinema, where we watch a lot of movies and discuss their historical relevance.
So take a look at that. Arthur, thank you again.
Hannah, thank you so much.
Well, that was an entertaining listen, and from 3 very, very different perspectives, too.
I am so glad we did this episode. And I think it was really funny how each person in their own way was very cautious and almost apologetic at first. Like, I don't want to offend you, but I don't really like this stuff. And that was exactly what we were looking for. Because the truth is, it's not for everybody. And we have a lot to learn by figuring out what the nuances of that are.
Yeah, obviously, one thing that I was picking up from like every conversation was like they enjoy like dance to an extent, but they're not actually going out to seek it. Like one thing that I noticed, or another thing that I noticed in these 3 distinctive conversations was that like everyone has their own little niche that they get tied up into, and that's why they don't look for these kind of films. And I like how kind of like the 3 of us were saying, oh, like, that's why I do this and this is what I strive for, you know?
I guess in my brother's case, his niche is actively not seeking films.
Yeah, or seeking anything, which I think was like a perfect way of also describing my friend Arthur, like he's just like, I like what I like, Sorry.
Right, right. And I think there's a lot to be revealed by the things they had in common when it comes to where they sort of drop off on this and where audiences in general disconnect with dance film or screen dance. And it seems that the most popular access points are movie musicals and like music videos. That's like the point of reference a general audience member has. And then I love what Claire's brother said about, how to reach a wider audience. He's like, dumb it down, make it violent, make it sexy, like, to be honest. But that's maybe why it's not meant for everybody. And that's kind of okay to make it precious for a smaller audience and a little more specific.
Yeah. I mean, another thing that I noticed, sort of a trend between all three interviews, maybe not explicitly with Arthur, but sound was mentioned quite a bit. And I know that there was a lot of critique with Jon's perspective on sound design in dance film. And I think that's something that I've noticed quite a bit. And I think that that's something that's also quite lacking as far as the field as a whole goes, like really, really careful consideration of the sonic environment.
Sound, but also like everyone was saying about like making dance film a little bit more not just accessible, but yeah, the whole like making it clear to understand, not just being like sexy and violent, but just like everyone said it's interpretive. And yeah, that is like, I mean, art is interpretive in general, it's not everyone is actually going to art museums, not everyone is going to dance performances. Movie theaters showcase films that have a clear beginning, middle, and end. And I think that's the hardest part for this kind of mode of filmmaking that audiences kind of struggle with.
Well, and I think that kind of reveals the truth here, the deep down message, which is like, why are you making what you're making? What is it for? Who is it for? And there's room for so much. There's room for big budget things that maybe are not the most artistic or highbrow, but there's room for all of these. And there's so many platforms and distribution channels, and it's easier than ever for people to make and share work. So I think that the future is bright for the art form.
And I think that there's a lot of talk about reconsidering festival structures and especially considering ways that short films are seen. And again, when it comes to creating films, as Jon kind of alluded to, like, I genuinely don't think that, I don't want to project at all, and maybe that people have like a whole like Airtable and have and also thank you, Jon, for Airtable, by the way.
Yes, thank you for creating Airtable. Just kidding.
Yeah. But I feel that when the work is created, it's created with within its own little bubble and within its own little echo chamber. And so as far as how it fits programmatically, it doesn't necessarily fit in many different environments. And again, is that necessarily the goal? I'm really huge about getting screen dance film away from like a purely product driven practice and really like having that be, really a process of finding a voice. But yeah, I think that's something to consider, like how, like what are the current venues that you can actually see these films, and how do they do a service and disservice to what you're trying to communicate? What other ways can that film be seen better, and how can you facilitate that?
Yeah, and all in all, that's why we're doing this show today. The whole point of doing this podcast is to reach people who do not know much about dance film and, learn a little something a bit more. And, not just having this be at a location like a dance film festival or an educational class that you would get in school, but this is free and accessible for anyone to sit in and listen to and learn a little something about screen dance.
Well, thank you, Jack, Jon, and Arthur, for being part of our shared resources and collective knowledge. And
Our
listeners,
lab rats.
Yes. Our outside eyes, whom we took no offense from in this episode. Don't worry. And listeners, make sure you check the show notes for all the links that we talked about today as well.
We'd love to hear from you. Send us an email at frameformpodcast@gmail.com and engage with us on social at frameformpod. That's frameform POD. If you like what you're hearing, leave a review and rate the show. It really helps out. And if you know someone who also likes dance or film, join the conversation and bring your friends.
Frameform is a production of Rixie, hosted by Hannah Weber, Jen Ray, and Clare Schweitzer. Edited by the Frameform team. Mix and theme song by myself, Mason Carlton. Thanks for listening. We'll see you next week.